Often when we're asked to create a macro, it could be a rather large macro. And the secret to creating a large macro is to break it down into smaller macros. This makes it much easier to audit, to manage, and to revise your macro. So I've proposed that we have a large macro here where I want to import a text file, and it could come from a variable location and have a variable name, import a text file into a file called import. Once that file is brought into the import file, it then gets manipulated in a way that I'm happy with, and then it sends it off to another file and appends it to another file called orders, which is like a database, and then it has a bit of tidying up to do. So the first thing I want to do is create a file called import, and I have a blank file in front of me, and this is the only file I have in Excel. And I'm going to press F12 and I'm going to save this file as import. And I'm going to put it on the desktop and save it as a macro-enabled workbook. So the import file is going to be the file that hosts the text file. So the text file is going to be brought into the import file, it's going to be manipulated in the import file, and then it's going to be sent out to the orders file. The import file has a second role as well. It's not only is it the host, but it also contains the code. This is where the code will reside. So our first macro is a macro called import file. So I actually want to record a macro, and I'm just going to hit my record macro button, and I'm going to call this macro import file, and I'm going to click OK. So what I want to record doing is opening a text file. So I'm going to go File, Open, and Browse, and I'm going to open a file which is a text file, and I can't see it at the moment. And that is because it's showing me all Excel files. If I hit this drop down here, I can choose all files. And so I'll see all the files, and I'll be able to open November 2016. And I'll click Open. When you open a text file, Excel automatically starts the text import wizard. When I look at this particular file, I know that I don't need the first 3 rows, which contain a heading, a subheading, and a blank row. So I want to start importing at row 4. I know that the other steps I'll just go next, 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 and finish. So I'll just hit finish. So that's opened up the text file, November 2016, which has one sheet in it called November 2016. Now I want to put this sheet into the import sheet. And there's a variety of ways you could do this. But the way I'm going is I'm going to put them side by side. And then I'm going to drag November 2016 across, oops, and into the import file in front of the first sheet. When I do that, automatically the text file closes and I'm left with the import file. And I'm left with one sheet in the import file, November 2016. I look at the file and I think that's great, but I don't need these equals in row 2. So I'm going to right click row 2 and I'll delete row 2. And then I'll click an A1. Wherever possible, I try to start and finish in the cell A1. And that's my first macro complete, so I stop recording. I now want to look at my code. Actually, before I look at my code, let's just run that macro and see if I can bring in October. So I'm just going to go to my Developers tab. I'll go into Macros, and I'll run the macro. It worked, but it didn't let me bring in October. It just brought in November again. So now I have 2 instances of November. So I do need to adjust the code so I can bring in October or December or whatever file I want to. To look at the code, I'm going to press the key combination Alt F11. I'm then going to hit the plus in front of modules to open the modules folder, and I'm going to double click module 1 to see what's in that module. And here's my code. The code has specific references to the file, November 2016, and to the sheet, November 2016. These need to be modified. I don't want it to always bring in a file called November 2016, and the sheet won't always be called November 2016. The file will have a variable name every single time we run the code. The name of the file will change. So a variable needs to be declared. And so what I'm going to do is take out these comment lines and declare a variable. To declare a variable, you use a dim statement, which is short for dimension. I'm going to declare my file. The variable name can be any name at all. I like to put the two letters my in front because I know there's no commands in Excel that begin with my, and then I won't conflict with anything else. So my file I'm going to declare as a string. There are a variety of data types. The string data type is when you want to declare that it will be text. My file name will be text. It'll be the name of a file and possibly the name of the location where the file resides. But there are other types which we'll look at later. I want to declare my file as a string and then set my file equal to, and rather than go C:// and much like what we have here, and refer to the name of the file and where it's located, what I want to do is I want Excel to bring up the file open, the standard file open dialog box. To get Excel to do that, you need to trigger application. So I'm going to go application. Now what I did is control spacebar. Control spacebar triggers a drop down of commands, appropriate commands. So then I'll go APP and I can either double click application or hit the down arrow and tab. My file equals application full stop GET, again down arrow to get open file name and press tab or double click it. My file is equal to the standard file open dialog box, and the user will choose whatever file they want and that will then be assigned to my file. But I want to take it one step further in that they can only see text files. So I'm going to go bracket, double quote, text files, and let me just check on the spelling correctly, comma, asterisk, full stop, txt, double quote, close bracket. So that will bring up the standard file open. Now, if you're ever curious about what a command means or does, if you come across a command you're not familiar with, then I'm going to click on Get Open File Name and press the function key F1. F1 will automatically throw you into help, and it will explain what that command does, and that will help with your learning. When I pressed on F1 for Get Open File Name, what it does is says that this displays the standard open dialog box and gets a file name that from the user without actually opening the file. So it hasn't actually opened it, it's just got a file name by the user choosing a file and assigned it to my file. And there's all sorts of information further down, examples for example, and how to add parameters such as text files. But I'll close that. So F1 is the function key for help if you ever need help. Now, having done that, my file, declare my file as a string, and then my file is whatever they choose, I no longer need this. And I'll just shift right arrow and highlight it for you. That has to be removed, inclusive of the double quotes. And in place will go my file. That's the file I want it to open. Okay, so it opens a variable file now. This here is selecting the sheet November 2016 in the text file. Well, the text file only ever has one sheet, so there's no need to tell it to select the one and only sheet. This line can go. Delete. This statement here is saying move the sheet November 2016 before the first sheet in import. Well, again, we don't need to refer to it by its name. We could refer to it just as the active sheet because there's only one sheet in the text file. So the active sheet is moved across to the import file and before the first sheet. The window is then maximized, row 2 is then selected, it's deleted, and A1 is selected. So declare my file as a string, a variable. My file is equal to the standard file open, showing text files. They can open any file, and that's my file. Then it will move whatever sheet it is in front of the first sheet in the import. It'll maximize it, row 2 will be selected, it'll delete row 2, and then A1 will be selected. Let's check if this works. So I'm going to go back to my Excel file. I might do a save, and now I'm going to run the macro and see if I can bring in October. As soon as I run the macro, here's the standard file open. And I can choose October, and I can go open. And straight away I can see that October has now been imported. Let's try and bring in December. So macros, run the macro, there's December, and open. And straight away it's brought in December. So now my code, which started out as a macro, has been modified to allow me to literally choose any file, any text file, and be able to bring in, doesn't matter what the name of the sheet is.